I had this class from last year, but I didn't feel like I did such a good job. So I'm re-recording it again, and we're going to replace it with today's class, God willing. With
You always do a great job. Don't ever say that.
I didn't. I don't think I did a good job on the last recording one, so I'm re-recording it. I didn't understand it fully. Even Gershon, I don't know if you can see Gershon's face, but Gershon was asking me some questions in the class, and I did not have good answers for him because I really didn't understand it. So here we go with re-recording it again. I think I pretty much got it down. Hopefully today I can explain the Tanya better than I did last year. But to do that, I'm excited to share with you some basics of Kabbalah. So if you're able to sit down and look on the text and the writings I'm going to share, you'll get some basic ideas which we constantly talk about. It's kind of like a map. So you want to be able to look at the screen if you can. And I will go over with you some fundamental ideas in Chassidus and Kabbalah, try to explain it to you in a very practical way, and then the class will flow. So these are very famous basic ideas, and I'm going to share them with you, and then we'll connect it all, how it fits into our class, which is our class is the kavanah, is the intent behind the action. But let's first go over some basics that we learn in Chassidus and we learn in Kabbalah. We'll go through some basic ideas together. Look at your screen. So number one, very famous, we always talk about that there are four worlds: the evolution and the descent and the way the world was created from Hashem's infinite energy, which God is infinite, to our physically world, had to go through a very strong levels of contractions and evolution and one condensation, one level after another. And Kabbalah and Chassidus brings down that there are four major worlds. So here you have it on your screen. You'll see the four major worlds. Number one, the idea is the initial flash of inspiration, which is the concept. Just like in a person, when they want to build a house, they first have the initial flash of inspiration. You have a concept of what you want. You don't know the details. That's called in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it's called the world of Atsilos. The English word often used to talk about this world is called emanation. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you why it's also called wisdom. But let's go through. World number one is exactly similar to when you decide you want to build a house. You don't know the details. You just have this inspiration. You have this concept. And that's what we call emanation. We call it Atsilos. That is world number one. World number two is the same as when after you have that concept that you want to build a house, you're inspired to it, is second thing that happens is the broadening of the concept and developing the concept in detail. So just like when you have an idea, you start developing it into ideas. That then is world number two. As the Hashem is creating our world, it goes from world one, which is just emanation. It emanated from Hashem, still just a concept. It gets into all the details, and that is called world number two. And the name for that is Bria, or the term in English which we normally use for that is creation. Or another name for that is considered understanding. I'll talk about this in a minute. So world one is the inspiration, it's the concept, it's called emanation, it's the idea of wisdom. World number two is developing the concept in details, it's broadening the concept, it's what we call Bria, it's creation, it's more detailed, it's beginning the idea of creation, and it's like the understanding of an idea after you first have the idea. Then we move on to world number three, and that is the emotional involvement and drawing up of the actual plan. So you get emotionally connected to something. The more you know the details of it, the more emotionally connected you are to that item. In Kabbalah, the name of that world is called Yetzirah. That's world number three. Or another name for it, it's formation. You're taking the creation and you're starting to form it. Another name which we're going to connect it to in today's class is that it's the world of emotion. So you have, let's just go to the fourth world and then I'll recap it. And then you have the fourth world, which is the practicalities. It's the actual physical building, and that's called Asiya, and that is the world of action. So again, let's use the different names here. One way to call the progression of the four worlds is you have the concept, then you develop the concept in details. And the third world is that the drawing of the actual plans. And the fourth world is the actual action of you building the house. Another way to say it, well, the Hebrew words for these four worlds are Atsilos, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. An English way they translate those four words: emanation, creation, formation, and action. Those are the four worlds of Atsilos. However, I want to the last way I'm describing each of those four worlds is that the world one is considered wisdom. World number two is what we want to call understanding. World three is the world of emotions, and world four is the world of action. And that's going to be specifically relevant to today's class. Different ways I'm explaining how the system of the four worlds work. I'm going to use one more way to explain it. Hopefully people are following me. And that is that the first world, the world of emanation, is so close to godliness. It's emanating from the infinite energy of Hashem. The first world almost seems like it has no of its own identity. It's not its own entity because it's so close to the infinite energy of Hashem, you can't even recognize the first world's entity. Then we move on to world number two, and where it's finally first starts becoming its own, somewhat of its own entity, its own existence, as it's kind of goes down a rung, goes to the next world, and gets further from the infinite energy of Hashem, and we want to call that creation. It starts becoming some idea of creation. Then you have the next world, which is formation. It's not just the idea of creation, but it's literally starting to take a form and more of its own figure and its own identity until we finally have the lowest world, and that's the world of action. So one way to describe it is just looking at it as a progression of getting further from the infinite and getting more of its own identity. Another way of describing it is that world two is the world one, it's higher than intellect. World two, it's the world of intellect. World three, it's the world of emotion. And world four is the world of action. Now I want to go through, is that clear? I think I'm being clear. If I'm not being clear, please let me know and I will repeat it again. I can send you these texts so you don't have to write it down. If anybody wants, I could share the link with the class afterwards and you could simply use my notes to try and cover it, or you could write it down if you work better like that. Okay, continuing on. This is very brief overview. Really, there's so much to talk about this class as we do hours and hours, but it's a very, very brief overview on the whole system of how existence came to be. Then there's something which we call the 10 Spheros, these 10 energies that Hashem used to create the world. So Hashem said the 10 commandments. He created the world with 10 sayings. Hashem put in a dichotomy or an energy of 10 different energies into creating the world. I don't want to really get into great detail into this, but I'll read through the names in English. The first one is wisdom. Second one is understanding. The third one is knowledge. So it's kind of the first three that I made in the red color. They are wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. They're kind of the way your brain evolves, the ideas and concepts and the way your brain evolves, kind of conception of an idea, comprehension of an idea, and understanding, or wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, the way he breaks it down over here. And those lead to the emotions, the next 7 emotions, which are in the blue color here: kindness, strength, beauty, victory, splendor, foundation, and kingship are the 7 emotions that are the children of the parents, which is the intellect. The first 3 gives birth to 7 emotions, and through a person's intellect, they can create the 7 emotions. We're not going to get into all the details. The great classes that we have on those, but not right now to break it down. But you have the idea of the 3 intellects create the 7 emotions. So far, we discussed basics in Kabbalah and Chassidus, that there are 4 worlds. The way it evolved, each world has 10 energies. Each of these 10 energies, how they exist in each one of the worlds. So let's just, the way I split up, here's where it's going to be connected to today's class now. The 10 are split up into 2 categories. The first 3 of the 10 are intellect, and the last 7 of the 10 are emotions. Okay, there's a lot more to talk about, but just as in a very basic way of understanding it, the first 3 are intellect, and the last 7 are emotions. So for those that are following me, I told you in today's class that the worlds, the 4 worlds, are split up. World 2 is more intellect, and world 3 is more emotions. Okay, world 2 is really more intellect, and world 3 is more emotions. Each world has all 10, but world 2, in world 2, the first 3 of the 10 as they exist in world 2 are much more overpowering, because world 2 is more of a intellectual world. So therefore, the first 3 of the 10 will be very much at home. It'll be its nesting place. It'll be its chat. It's, I think he says his throne, I think is one of the terms used. They're very strongly felt in world 2, because world 2 is a world of intellect, and therefore the first 3 of the 10, which are intellect, exist very strongly in world 2. And then world 3, since world 3 is all emotions, is mostly emotions. The 7 of the 10, which are emotions, will be very strongly felt in world 3 because world 3 is more of a world of emotion. So each of the 4 worlds have the 10 energies, but in world 2, which is very strongly intellect, will have a much stronger handle on the first 3 of the 10. And world 3, that's emotions, will have a much stronger level on emotions. And then we go into the 5 levels of the soul, okay? Let's talk about every person has a soul. You know, you often tell someone, you're such a neshama, or you say you're such, someone has a nefesh. We throw out different words referring to the soul, and that's because there is 5 levels. This is the last topic concept for today that I'm going to share, is there are 5 levels to our neshama. There's 5 levels to our soul. In Hebrew, they're called nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. And each of those levels are referencing another world. So the lowest level of the soul, which is called nefesh, and here in this order, I put it number 1, kind of working backwards from bottom up. That is world number 4. Ruach, which is the next level of the soul, that's working its way up, that's world number 3. Neshama, which is a higher level of the soul, which we call neshama, that's in world number 2. Chaya is in world number 1. And Yechida is so connected to the infinite, it's not part of the worlds. But let me explain something. In the human being, we also have different levels to the soul. The level, nefesh, which is the lowest of your 5 levels of your soul, is connected to the world of action. That is the soul, how it experiences the body in a very physical way. But as you work your way up, step 2, as you work your way up of the soul, that is all emotions. It's how your soul expresses itself in emotions, as it connects with emotions. That is connected in the 4 worlds, if you're listening, to world number 3, which is the world of emotion. And as you work your way up, the level of neshama is the level of intellect. That's how your soul connects to intellect. It's intellectual, and it therefore connects to that world number 2, which is the world of intellect. And those are really, you only feel in your body the lowest 3 levels, because the higher 3 levels are kind of out of your body. But again, the lowest level of your soul is how it connects to the physical body. It's like the lowest of the 4 worlds. The second level of your soul is how it connects to emotions. That is the second to lowest world, is the world of emotion. And then the highest of the 3 levels of your soul that exists in your body is the level of intellect, how it connects to intellect, and it's connected to the world of intellect, which is world number 2. Is anyone following me here? We have the 4, we have the 4 worlds. We have the 10 energies within each world. And then we have, besides the 10 energies that exist in each world, we also have the 5 levels of the soul. And the world and the 10 energies and the soul have different elements that they're connected. A certain part of the soul is connected to a certain part of the 4 worlds, which could be either the intellectual part or the emotional part. Yes? Are people following? Are people making sense of these basic concepts in Kabbalah and Chassidus? I hope people are following. Now,
yes.
Yes. Okay, Brad, thank you. Perfect. Okay, good. So now we're going to move on to talk about, now that you got it, good. Okay, very good. So now we're going to move on to talk about why am I telling you all this? It's good for you to know, it's good basic stuff, but we're going to connect it to today's class. I'm going to share with you one interesting point, and then we'll start learning the text inside. We are describing the difference between the angels' connection to Hashem and the human's connection to God. And there's one basic fundamental difference, and we started to discuss it in the previous chapter of Tanya. We even expressed it within the human being. You could have one level versus another. He calls the angels' experience and relationship with God similar to animals. Why would he call the angels' connection to Hashem similar to animals and not as similar to human beings? It's a very interesting basic reason, is because animals work off impulse. And their intellect is kind of impulsive. It's kind of naturally what they have born. They don't really go beyond it. They don't start contemplating, let me be more of a giving person. They just act what feels right intuitively, what feels to them right, or intuitively what feels to them wrong. And they act based on their instincts. So for example, intuitively, they want to protect their babies. They'll kill anything that tries to start up. A lion will kill anything that tries to start up with its babies. Intuitively, they want to attack the babies of another animal to eat it. And there's no contradiction there. There's no conversation there because animals are acting simply on instinct, impulse, intellect, but based off natural, impulse that they have that are born to them. However, human beings are able to touch into a higher level than not just the animal impulses that human beings have, but human beings are able to touch and relate and go to a whole nother level, which they could think about themselves from the outside. Am I behaving as I should? Can I understand someone else's perspective? Or am I stuck in just thinking the way I see things? So animals and people are very different. Angels are more similar to animals, often, because angels are hardwired, just like animals are hardwired. So for example, where can I show you this, that animals are hardwired? If you stick your head in a lion's mouth and the lion bites off your head, the lion didn't do anything wrong because it works on impulse and instinctive existence and what it needs to do, and it will bite off your head, and it hasn't done anything wrong because it cannot think greater or deeper than that. And you can't punish the lion for acting like a lion because there's no expectation from him to act like anything else than a lion. A human being, on the other hand, is held accountable. It doesn't matter what your impulses are or what your instincts are. You know what's right, and you have to know what's right and wrong, and we expect of you to know what's right and wrong, and therefore we're going to punish you, let's see, in a court of law for doing what's wrong and not doing what's right, because you able to control your impulses, and we expect of you to be higher than impulses. Now, angels don't bite off people's heads like lions. They do things that Hashem wants them to do, but they're hardwired to serve Hashem. So the reason they're doing what Hashem wants them to do is not because they're such intellectuals and have the capacity to understand things out of themselves, but they're just hardwired to run in this format that they are. And therefore they're serving Hashem out of instinct. And they might be serving Hashem with tremendous love and fear of God. But the fact is they're still serving Hashem out of impulse and instinct. And therefore most angels' relationship with God will be in a manner of impulse and instinct, that they're serving Hashem based on their natural instinct. However, a human being can serve God out of his natural instinct, which he has just by being Jewish. We believe that you have an instinctive impulse to do what Hashem wants you to do. But we also believe that you could act beyond intellectual, beyond the animal or angel experience. You could serve Hashem in that way. And those are two levels of emotions, which we started discussing. This is how it falls into our general topic here in Tanya. Two levels of our emotions that we started discussing in the previous chapters of Tanya. There's two reasons why we do mitzvahs or why we learn Torah. You have your reason why, your emotion behind it, your reason for it, your kavanah, your intent could either be your natural intent that you want to do what's right because you're born Jewish, or you could develop human manufactured intellect that is coming from your recognizing things that are beyond your impulses and serve Hashem in that way. So you could either rely on your impulsive, animalistic, angelic, instinctive nature that you have, that you want to do what's right, or you could grow beyond that intellectually and want to serve Hashem from a more human capability of intellectual capability that a person has. And with that, we're going to go to today's Tanya. That is the main feature and focus of what we want to explain. In today's Tanya, we have about 9 minutes left. We might go over a few minutes, but now that we did that whole presentation of the basic overview of Kabbalah and Chassidus, and we explain what today's message is, let's do it inside. And because of this, because angels act on impulse, act on instinct, that they're hardwired to serve Hashem, therefore Nikrayim Hamalachim B'Shem Chayis U'Behemis. Therefore angels are called Chayis U'Behemis. They're called animals. They're called like beasts and animals. Angels are actually sometimes in Kabbalah and even in the Navi and Tanakh referred to as animals. And in the great revelation of Ezekiel, of Yecheskel, it describes the chariot that Ezekiel goes up to heaven in. It says, there was a lion's face on the right side, and an ox's face on the left side, describing this fiery chariot going up with Elijah the prophet, or describing where we have in the Tanakh the story of Elijah, or we have in the prophecy of Ezekiel, which he describes Hashem's throne with the different animals over there. We see that animals are describing basically angels. Why are angels being described as animals? Because the source of angels, or the source of animals, I should say, is from the same place. It's from the angels, which come from God's throne, which has the idea of instinctive and impulsive, wanting to be maybe very religious or very God-fearing or love of Hashem. But again, it's in an animalistic way where they're acting on impulse. Because angels, like animals, don't have free will. They don't have the able to think about themselves from the outside. And these angels' way of acting, their fear of Hashem and their love of Hashem, is just natural. As it explains in the Zohar, in the Torah portion, Pinchas, it talks about this concept that angel service to Hashem is hardwired to be instinctive and impulsive. It's not free will that they have choice. That's left to the human being. And angels act on impulse. And that's why, in a certain sense, a tzaddik service of God is greater than an angel. So there's very great angels. And we're saying that there's great, righteous, holy, righteous people, a tzaddik who lives in our world, who can, in a certain way at least, outdo and be greater than the angels. Because the tzaddik, the holy man's source of his soul, where does it come from? Who ba'olam habriya is in the world of Bria, is in world number 2. Bria is the world of intellect, because it's when the tzaddik decides to serve God, as I explained in the introduction to today's class, he intellectually, logically said this, he manufactured emotions and got in touch with his intellectual part of himself, not his impulsive and instinctive part, and therefore he serves Hashem. His soul comes from world number 2. Umadur hamalachim. However, you want to know where the root of angels come from, at least most of them, is in Olam HaYetzira, is in world number 3, which is the world of emotion, because emotions is more instinctive, is more impulsive. And therefore, angels come from a lower world. The source of angels come from a lower world than the source where a tzaddik, where a holy man comes from, because he acts on intellect as human beings can act, and the angels operate in more an emotional level, and therefore they come from world number 3, whereas the tzaddik comes from world number 2, as I explained in the introduction. Now he says there are, in this note here, he says the truth is, there are some angels that also come from higher angels. I guess within angels alone, there's higher and lower angels. And there are some angels that operate and come from the world of Bria, of the world of intellect. It's just in the note here. And in regular angels, when do we say angels come from world number 3? That's in the average angel. Yes, you should know there, even within angels, there are higher angels who come from world number 2, the world of Bria, the world of creation, which the way they serve Hashem is with intellect. So somehow angels do have also not an intellect. There are certain angels, whatever that means, that have a feature of intellect, and they do come from world number 2, the world of intellect. Like it says in the Zohar, he explains that there are 2 kinds of angels. There's tivim, sichlim. There are angels who are instinctive, emotionally connected to Hashem, and then there are intellectual ones. Like if you look in the books on Kabbalah and so on, you'll see this idea. But it's fascinating, but we're not getting into just angels today. But there are 2 kinds of angels. However, the average angel, I guess, comes from the world of instinct, impulse, emotional instinct and impulse and drive, a good one, but instinct and impulsive. And the tzaddik, we're saying, comes from the world of intellect. And the reason why tzaddiks come from world 2, as I explained in the introduction, and angels come from world 3, because in the world of Yetzira, world number 3, over there, what energy is shining is very strong. In world number 3, it's the emotions that come from the infinite energy of Hashem. World number 3 is full of awe of God, fear of God, love of God. That is the overriding factor and energy that exists in world number 3. Like it says, the emotions nest in world number 3, in world of Yetzirah. That is where they're at home. That's where their place is. World number 3 is full of emotions, and therefore angels that come from world number 3, they're instinctive, impulsive, not impulsive in a bad way, but instinctive. Their natural tendencies are to want to fear Hashem, want to love Hashem, because they come from that world of emotions where remember I showed you the 7 or the 6 bottom of the 10 spheros, as I showed in the introduction, are mainly situated and rooted. That energy is very strongly felt in world number 3. And therefore, that is the way the angels constantly operate, day and night, to never ending. Angels, what do they do a whole day? They serve God, they stand in fear and dread, because that is how they're hardwired. That's where they come from. And that is the whole campment of the angels we call the Gabriel angel, Shemas Smaller, from the left, meaning they have a very strong tendency, emotional awe and fear, because that's where they came from. They came from a very strong emotional place. Then you have another camp of the angel of Michael, of Michael, that's full of love of Hashem. And he's operating out of serving Hashem out of love, because they came from world number 3, the world which we call Yetzirah, the world which we call formation, but that is a very strong world of emotion, and therefore they're operating naturally, serving Hashem in those very strong emotions instinctively their whole life. But when you go up to world number 2, what is revealed in world number 2? What's the existence there? The intellect of the infinite energy of Hashem is coming down, is revealed in that world. That is the world number 2, which is intellect, is the source, are the parents of emotions. Because when you think about something, you create emotions. So world 2 is where there's very strong intellect that will give birth and create the emotions in world number 3. But the existence, if you go to world number 2, you'll see a very heavy, powerful dose and energy of intellect, which will give birth to world 3, which will give birth to the emotions, because what you're thinking about leads to emotions. But as they exist in world number 2, they're very, very strong intellect. Also a source for this, he's quoting, is from the book of Zohar. That the mother, the parents, meaning the intellect that creates the emotion, their nest, their throne exists in world number 2 with the first 3 of the 10, as I showed you. When you break up the 10 into 2 categories, the 10 spheros, the 10 lights, the 10 energies are broken up into 2 categories. The first 3 are intellect, and the next 7 or 6 are emotion. The first 3 are very strongly existence. Their root, their base is in world number 2, the world of intellect. And therefore, in world 2, because it's a very heavy, strong energy of intellect there, that is the base, that's the abode for the souls of righteous, the people at tzaddikim, who when they serve Hashem out of love and fear, though they have the kind of love and a fear that are manufactured through intellect. They meditate intellectually with their mind on the greatness of Hashem, manufacturing intellectual emotions that come from the intellect, not instinctive, but more self-created, self-generated, manufactured by the person through intellect. So world 2 is the world of intellect. The tzaddikim, the righteous people who serve Hashem with intellect, are mainly based, their souls come from world number 2, and that's why they act the way they do. They serve Hashem out of manufactured intellect, emotions that come from intellect. This kind of love is called a love from the heart's desires that came through intellect. Like we spoke earlier in this idea of time. But now, so that's what happens, my friends. So you have tzaddikims, righteous people's souls, who come from the world number 2, the world of Bria, the world of creation, which intellect is the heavy part over there, and they're serving Hashem with intellect, because even their emotions are manufactured through intellect. And then you have the level of the angels, which serve Hashem through an instinct and impulse that come from the emotional world, world number 3, the world of Yetzirah, or the world of formation. What happens is, from this unbelievable love that the tzaddik feels, in intellectual love that he feels in the world, he feels in the world of Bria, we also have another name for that, which you guys might be familiar with, which is called Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, Ha'elyon, the upper. So he's going to tell you now that there's 2 levels of Gan Eden. There's the higher Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, and then there's the lower Garden of Eden. The higher Garden of Eden is world number 2, is the world of Bria, the world of creation. The lower Gan Eden, as you might have guessed now, is in world number 3, is the world of formation, the world of Yetzirah, where the emotions exist. So when the tzaddik manufactures this tremendous love of Hashem, he's now getting in touch with the world he comes from, world number 2, the world of intellect. The tzaddik gets in touch with the world of intellect, creating garments in that world for his soul, in that world, that when he will die, he will reconnect with all the investments that he made of the world which he comes from, and experience godliness through that garment that he created in this world. So when we live in this world, we might not realize how we're affecting our source and where we go to, but we do. It's like investing. So when you live in this world, the tzaddik comes from world number 2, the world of intellect, serves Hashem with manufactured intellectual love in this world and fear of Hashem. Then as he serves Hashem in that manner, creating garments, meaning creating experiences, creating intellect, which he will then be able to go back after 120 and experience all the investments that he made and enjoy Hashem in a revealed way, which is not revealed in this world, but we reveal Hashem, and he'll exist in the Garden of Eden. Which Garden of Eden? Gan Eden, the upper Gan Eden, the higher level of Gan Eden. However, who is going to benefit and enjoy this method of afterlife? These are souls that are these high-level souls. We're talking about great tzaddikim, very righteous people who served Hashem through manufactured emotions because they're such great intellects and they're able to experience and learn about Hashem in such a high level. Remember, I told you this. There's 3 levels of the soul. That is the level of the soul that experiences intellect. So when the tzaddik down here in this world experience godliness through manufactured intellectual stimulus, he's really getting in touch in this world with his intellectual part of his soul, which I told you is called neshama. That level of neshama will then go back after life to that world and experience the intellectual levels based on that level of his soul. But a lower level of a soul, but the level of our soul that's in touch with our emotions, our more instinctive part of ourselves. And so the tzaddik's lower level of his soul, the one that's more instinctive, impulsive, emotional, and maybe most average Jews that are not serving Hashem with tremendous manufactured emotions, that serve God with love and fear, that are instinctive to the Jewish person. I love Hashem, I fear Hashem. And I do that, not because I meditated on the greatness of Hashem. It's simply because I'm Jewish. I inherited this natural urge and love for Hashem. So I'm acting like an animal in a sense. I'm acting like an angel in a sense. I'm serving Hashem out of my impulse, instinct that I have by being Jewish. And Oilas Hashem will not go up to the world, to the higher Gan Eden, the intellectual one, because I didn't serve Hashem. I didn't create garments. I didn't invest in that world when I was here in this world. I simply lived off impulse and instinct of my godly soul, of holiness of Hashem, but I operated in the features of an animal, in the features of an angel, which comes from world number 2. So therefore, when my soul goes back, I'd never invested really in world 2. I only invested in the lower world 3. So I'm going to go back, and my Gan Eden will be the lower Garden of Eden, the more of emotional one. However, I will get times in my life, even if I operated more of instinctive Judaism than manufactured emotions, I will get to go up to the higher Gan Eden on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is coming in 2 days. So on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, even the souls that mainly served Hashem more instinctively, they were Jewish instinctively, impulsively, not manufactured emotions, even they get to go up after 120. They get a little bit of a ride. They go up in an elevator. The example I used last year, I think, was, the bank, when you send your deposit through the thing, So on Shabbos and Yom Tov, you have such an elevator and you go up from world number 2, from world number 3 up to world number 2. Derech Amud, using a pillar, he's describing it like an elevator. There's a pillar that goes from the lower Gan Eden, the lower floor of the Garden of Eden, like Gan Eden Elyon, to the upper floor, to the higher Gan Eden. Sho'elam HaBriya, which is world number 2, which is the world of Bria, which is the world of creation. Hanikra Gan Eden Elyon, which is called the upper Gan Eden. And when we experience that, we'll all get to experience that on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, even if we didn't serve Hashem in this world in that way. We'll be able to enjoy the tremendous pleasure from God's divine radiance that shines in that upper Gan Eden, in the upper world, in world number 2, even though we mainly invested and served as in world number 3 instinctively, emotionally, but we'll go up to world number 2. Why? Why does it work that you basically eat what you invested? Just like investing, if you invest in this, you could benefit from it later on. Why is it that you end up going to the Garden of Eden of the world you invested in? The pleasure when a person has intellectual pleasure. You only enjoy pleasure from understanding a concept. So whatever the concept is, if you understood that concept, the pleasure you will get is from understanding that concept. So if there are concepts you didn't understand, you won't get any pleasure from that concept. So if you only lived your life in a world 3, an emotional world experience, you're not going to really benefit and understand the delight of intellectual emotions because you didn't ever live that life. So how are you going to benefit of that after 120? So if your whole life you lived an emotional, instinctive life, grasping that after 120, that's what you invested in, that's what you understand, that's what in pleasure you'll enjoy. You will enjoy after 120 the understanding of everything you understood in this world. From that world, you will then go up into understanding. Now, the question is, well, why is it that if I only get what I benefited from and what I experienced and what I understood in this world, I'll be understanding in a deeper dimension of the world to come. And since I only invested in world number 3, in the world of emotion, how come on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, I get to go up to world number 2, the world of intellect? If I didn't experience godliness, didn't invest in that world, didn't experience that here, why will I enjoy it? So he says something interesting now. This is going a step deeper, right? So until now in class, I've explained that you basically have to choose between either acting like an animal or an angel on one side, which is impulsive, instinctive, or acting like the unique skills of a human being that they can manufacture emotions and intellect that's beyond just a regular instinct. But now I'm going to say that even Jewish people that most of their life served impulsive instinctively, they served Hashem with just the natural feelings of Judaism that they had without meditating and manufacturing greater emotions. Even they still have free will. Even though they have a natural impulse that they want to be Jewish and they want to do what's right, they could choose not to be Jewish, not to do what's wrong. So there is still free will. So you cannot, even a person that operates and acts based on the instinctive emotions that he has and being Jewish and doing what Hashem wants, the fact is he's still not exactly like an animal or like an angel, because animals and angels really don't have free will. They really don't. The animal is going to do what an animal does. It really doesn't have free will, it just operates in however it's created. But that human being that most of its life is acting instinctively and impulsively, the fact is that he still has free will and he's still making a choice. Now, he might be helped by his instinct and impulse that he wants to be Jewish and he likes to do what Jewish people do. He might not be meditating on very deep meditations, but the fact is he still has free will. So he's a step up. Even a human being that acts always impulsive and instinctive, he's still a step up above the animals. So that is why, because of that, he will merit to go to the higher Gan Eden on Rosh Chodesh and Shabbos and join the more intelligent, the manufactured emotion world, the intellectual world over there, because even his impulse is not fully impulsively like an angel and like an animal. It's more, it also has that free will, making some decisions within himself, and therefore at certain points he will be able to rise to world number 2. Let's see that inside. And this, that the souls will sometimes be able to go up above the angels and be able to go up to world 2, the world of intellect, after 120 to the higher Gan Eden, at least on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, even though their whole life down here they served Hashem with just natural emotions and intellect. Why can they go up to world number 2 if they always served in a way of world number 3? Because through their love and fear, when they served here, the fact is the human being, even though he used his instinctive Judaism, had to do his kafis and had to fight, subdue the body. There was still part of him that said, don't do it, be lazy, don't do what you're supposed to do. And he had to fight that. Whether he had to conquer his other unhealthy impulses that he has to do bad, that he had drives and desires to fulfill gluttony, or whether sometimes he was tired and lazy and he says, no, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to get in touch with my instinctive inspiration to want to serve Hashem, like we mentioned earlier in Tanya. And the Jew, though mostly acting off as impulsive and instinctive Judaism, still had to make a choice and had to choose what was right over what's wrong. And he chose the good. He chose to break the evil spirit, the selfishness, and so on. And by that, move away the darkness and bring light instead of darkness into the world. And we know what happens when you turn on the light in a dark place. It's so beautiful. You enjoy the pleasures of that light that comes out of the darkness, like I mentioned earlier. So the human being has done something amazing, although mostly operating out of his instinctive Jewish feelings that he has naturally by him and not creating manufacture. But the fact is, he's still fighting the good fight and he's still bringing light into a dark place. And therefore, at some times, his soul will be able to go up on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, which is coming in tomorrow night. Your soul, after 120, will be able to go up, maybe even as someone experiences in our lifetime, that higher experience of manufactured emotions from world number 2. Now he's going to explain one more deep idea, which I didn't explain in the introduction. So I'm just going to give this is the last point for today. I know we're a little bit over time, but powerful class of Tanya. So let's just finish let me explain short introduction, and then we'll learn it inside. I told you there's 4 worlds, right? I told you each world has a unique features of that world. I want to share with you one more point. Each world has something we call the light and the vessels. There's vessels in each world, and then there's the light in each world. What do I mean that there's vessels and there's lights in each world? When I tell you, well, often vessels and light are light doesn't have as much features, limited features as the vessel does. So actually I have a cup here. I got this in SeaWorld. So this cup has very specific features. It has certain inches, it's tall, how wide it is. I don't know, it could hold a liter, whatever it could hold inside it. You could get unlimited drinks in SeaWorld, by the way, if you have this cup. You could get as much soda as you can, which is not such a healthy thing during the day if you have this cup. But the interesting about this cup, it could take any kind of drink inside it. You could put Coke, you could put Sprite, you could put a smoothie inside it, you could put any color. So kind of same thing is also like with a light bulb. Light is more pure, but then you take a colored vessel and you could kind of play with the light, change the color, strengthen, you could do different things. So vessels, when I tell you there's vessels in each of the 4 worlds, what I mean is very distinct features that exist in each world. So if your soul comes from the world of Bria, of intellect, that is who you are. You come from the vessels of that world. And if you're an angel and you come from the world of emotions, you are the vessels of that world. You're very distinct who you are. You come from that world. That is the reality of very specifically in that world. But then, and this is the novelty, you have light that goes into each world. The light exists within the vessels and appears to be on the level of that world, but it's really coming from a much deeper place. So what we have here going on is you could have the infinite energy of the light of Hashem coming in from, let's say, the first world, the world of Atsilos, the world of emanation, which is really doesn't have any features because it's so close to Hashem. And then that light travels down into the vessels of world 2 and starts to take on their features. And then it goes down to level number 3 and starts to take some of their features. So in a sense, the light looks and acts and exists within that world as the vessels it's in, but it really comes from a much more pure, higher, infinite place than the vessels in each of those worlds. Let's see this inside now. Behold, everything we've explained so far in Tanya today is describing the soul as it comes from certain vessels, certain places of each world. However, you should know, when the soul studies Torah and he serves Hashem with mitzvahs, you have a soul who comes from world number 2, who's using his intellect to experience godliness with world number 2. But the Torah itself he's studying in world 2 is like the light that it's really much greater than world 2. It's coming from world even 1. It just exists in world 2 through the vessels in world 2, but the origination of the light comes actually from a much higher place, just like light coming into a vessel. They're godliness, it's godliness coming into the vessels, and infinite energy of Hashem. The light goes into the vessels of the world and totally becomes one with that world, but the light comes from a much higher, deeper place than the vessels itself. Just like you could fill any drink in the cup, where the water has much less features, but as it gets into the cup, it starts taking on the shape of the cup. But really, it's much more infinite and pure than the features of the cup. And that is what we call the 10 lights, the spheros, the energies in the world number 2, the world of Bria, the world of intellect, through the intellectual manufactured emotions of fear and love of God, and as the light continues to descend from the world of intellect to the world of emotions to world number 3, going into the emotional love and fear of Hashem. And if you go higher up, where did the light from world number 2 come from? World number 1, the world of Atsilos, the world of emanation, and comes from, as the light came earlier from world number 1, as it was one with the infinite energy of Hashem existing in that world. And where did world 1 get it from? It got it from the infinite energy of Hashem himself, who comes from Hashem. So those are all the way Torah and mitzvahs are experienced through the worlds. They're the light of the world. They're not as they go into the vessels of each world, but they themselves are much more pure. However, when I tell you souls and angels come from a particular world, the souls are not the light of each world. The soul that comes from world number 2, the world of intellect, comes from the vessels, which are clearly, distinctly defined as that world. Not the light, which is less, not as distinct and featured as world number 2. The light kind of is a little bit like hovering above it, but the soul of the tzaddik comes from world number 2, from the vessels of world number 2, which very clearly and distinctly and specifically have the features of world number 2, the world of intellect. They exist in their source as they are in the vessels of either world 2 or 3, the world of creation or formation. And it takes pleasure after 120 in the greatness of Hashem, the light of Hashem that comes into the vessels of each of those worlds. Meaning that, so it goes back up to its world as the vessels of that world, the vessels of world number 2. But remember, it studied Torah intellectually in this world. So the Torah exists as the lights in world number 2, which are higher than the vessels within that world. But the pleasure that the soul will have after 120 in that world is because he'll be able to grasp the lights that exist in that world because he studied Torah when he was in a physical body. And that's what it means when you do a mitzvah, the reward of the mitzvah itself, is that when you do the mitzvah, you will enjoy that mitzvah after 120 as it exists as the lights in that world of what you studied and what you learned. And that is the end, my friends, of today's, we went 20 minutes over, but that is the end of today's very deep Tanya and Kabbalistic idea. And now we'll discuss any questions or comments that people have on today's